the perfect ride for you today with the New Year New Ride sales event at Guam Auto Spot. Get behind the wheel of the 2024 Outlander Sport starting at just $22,995 or only $156 per paycheck. Visit GuamAutospot.com or call 671-478-AUTO.
Find a plan that goes with your flow. Get unlimited local talk, text, and data at the most affordable rate with Unlimited Flow Postpaid, only at Docomo Pacific.
Wendy's Guam's Mushroom Bacon Cheeseburger is here for a limited time. Juicy beef, crispy applewood smoked bacon, roasted mushrooms, and melty Munster cheese or Asiago cheese all in a toasted bun. You can even make it a double or a triple. But hurry, it won't last for long. Grab yours today only at Wendy's Guam. You or someone you know looking for a job? Well, Sentinel Security offers starting pay between $10 to $15 an hour. They'll even train you. Email them today that you're interested at sentinelsolutionsguam@gmail.com. Sentinel Security, Guam's most reliable security solution for your home and business. The moms in your life want ice cream, especially in this heat. Treat them from now to Mother's Day to Cold Stone Guam's Mother's Day cake with its layers of moist yellow cake, pistachio ice cream, and pureed raspberries wrapped in a fluffy buttercream frosting. Head on over to Cold Stone's GPO or Micronesia Mall locations any day of the week. Cold Stone Creamery, the ultimate ice cream experience.
Kandit News is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam.
Good evening, my dear friends. It is 9:58 p.m. on Saturday, April 26, 2025. I'm sorry that I'm coming to you so late. You know what? My day starts early, and there's always a lot of stuff to do, both at home and on the road. And so today was one of those days. I hope to have a calmer day tomorrow, but I am going to be dropping a very serious editorial and a call out tomorrow regarding it. All relates to that whole, remember that whole Pat and Tyler expose regarding Charissa Tenorio and Josh Tenorio. It's all related to that, and I'll work on it tomorrow, but I'll try not to work so hard. Tomorrow's the Lord's Day, and I hope to keep the Lord's Day sacred as much as possible. Hi Joanne. Hi Auntie Bennett. You know, I'm pretty sure I've discussed this before. I'm pretty sure I've said this before, that my favorite job that there ever was. You know, I've been blessed to have some pretty good jobs over the past couple of decades, but I have a favorite job. And it was the year that I worked as a waiter at Capricciosa. I worked at the time it was the Royal Orchid one. That was Capricciosa 1, actually. It used to be across the street over at where the G-Spot building was. That's where Capricciosa started in Guam. And then they moved over to Royal Orchid, and that was considered Capricciosa 1. Capricciosa 2 is over at the I want to say the name of the place is Pacific Plaza. Anyway, next to the Westin. And then Capricciosa number 3 is over at Agani Shopping Center. But that came much later. my favorite job ever. I had a great working environment. I had a great boss, Sawada-san. My other boss was Frank Tritasco. My other boss was Arnell. Arnell's last name is escaping me. No, Arnell was my coworker, if I'm not mistaken. Ishii-san was my other boss from Japan. Anyway, we were paid minimum wage. And at the time, it was the year 2000. And if you remember, the year 2000 was a great year for tourism. I think that was the final year before there was a recession in Asia and things sort of went downhill. And then things didn't start going back uphill until the Calvo administration, which came into office in 2011. And then tourism spiked all the way through 2019. And then the pandemic happened. And so, these were great times to be. Back then we called ourselves waiters. Now they're called servers. It was a great time to be a waiter. There was so much activity, especially in Tuman. There were so many tourists, and not just tourists, but flight attendants. They were great tippers. Our local people, that was a hit or miss. But tourists, especially tourists from the mainland U.S., tourists from Saipan, the flight attendants, and to a lesser extent, tourists from Japan and Korea. We would take home, and back then, $75 a night was a lot of money. We would take home anywhere from $75 to $300 a night. And we would only work for like 4 hours. And if it weren't for those tips, we would not have been able to make ends meet because we were working for 4 hours or 2 hours or 3 hours, making only minimum wage. And because we were only working part-time, we didn't have benefits. We didn't have health insurance. We certainly didn't have a retirement plan. But people in the restaurant industry, the servers who were older than me, they made up for that. I remember most of the people who were older than me were working more than just their serving job. They were working at somewhere else for another low-paying job. And at the time, if I'm not mistaken, minimum wage was only $5.15 an hour. And so these other people would take jobs for like $7 some an hour at an office just so that they could have the health insurance for themselves and their families. And essentially, almost all their paycheck would go to be paying the premium, but they would make their money off of the tips. And everyone, the restaurant owner, the restaurant managers, the restaurant servers, the kitchen staff, the bussers, we all understood this is how it worked. And, it was an incentive for all of us to work harder. And I have to imagine that has not changed much. In fact, I'll bet a whole lot of money that the majority of restaurant workers in Guam are still paid minimum wage. Granted, minimum wage is higher, but it's not anywhere near living wage. You need those tips. But what's different between then and now, aside from the time that's lapsed, is the economy sucks. There are not as many tourists coming. They're not dining out in the restaurants. Many of these restaurants, I imagine, are staying open and keeping their employees running and operating at a loss. They're operating on the capital that the owners put in to this place because either they feel some sort of loyalty to these employees. They don't want to give up these employees. Or they feel a loyalty to their customers, or both these things. But these are tough times. And so when, if I wasn't doing Kandit, honestly, I'd go back to being waiter. I'd apply over at Capricciosa because I know that job. I probably have to relearn the system or whatever, but I like being a waiter. I like serving people. So a lot of things that Senator Telo Taitague says, it just goes in one ear and out another. And it has a lot to do with, she says some outrageous stuff sometimes. And I don't want to be the person that always criticizes her for every single thing that she says. So when someone said to me that 2 days ago in a public hearing, Senator Taitague was complaining that she would have to pay a service fee at a restaurant if she didn't like the service, I thought, no, that's not true. That she did not say that. That's ridiculous. As much as I disagree with Senator Taitague about a whole lot of stuff, right? I just could not imagine that she would say that. And then I went to the public hearing online, and then I saw what she said, and I was just in disbelief. How it's one thing for a poor person to go into a restaurant and expect good service, and they get bad service, and then they complain to the manager, and you say, I put this money in, I saved up so I could bring my family here. I wasn't treated well. Can you give me a break on this bill, or can you just don't charge me the service charge, which is 8%, 10%, 12%, maybe 15%, sort of depends on where you're going, but it's not a whole lot, right? Don Maga says, name one restaurant that puts a gratuity on their check. It is always a service charge. Service charges do not have to go to the waiter or waitress. The restaurant pockets the money. Well, fine, whatever the case may be. So whether the restaurant pockets the money, or whether the server gets all of that or some of that, or whether the kitchen staff gets some, if you read the editorial that I wrote, I address all of that stuff. Anyway, so thanks, John Maga, for pointing that out. So I can understand if someone who doesn't drive around a Lexus, who doesn't make a lot of money, has a problem with the service that they're getting. It's quite a different story when you are a home-owning senator with a net worth in the six figures, drives around a Lexus, makes $55,000 a year, complaining that you have to pay $3.55 in a service charge. In an economy where restaurants are just struggling to survive, paying their employees anyway to come into work to serve at tables that are not going to be filled because the tourists aren't coming, paying these employees at minimum wage, where their only hope of making ends meet is getting those tips, and whether it's a portion or all of that service charge, or the cash tips that they get, or additional whatever. Oh, and by the way, John Maga, when I was a server at Capricciosa, I'll name one restaurant for you, Capricciosa. Capricciosa had I think it was a 10% line, and I think it was for parties over six and more. There was a service charge that would apply, and the servers would get the complete service charge. I don't know if it's still the same, John Maga. I haven't worked there in 25 years. But 25 years ago at Capricciosa, the service charge did go to the waiters at Capricciosa. I can't speak to any other restaurant, so do your homework before you spew your bull crap. So anyway, so when Senator Taitague said this, really, Senator? Because the server didn't get you your refill on water on time? Or because your French fries didn't come out with ketchup at the same time? Or because you didn't get the smile from the minimum wage making server, who probably has another job somewhere else when that shift is off, who is probably not going to be making enough money that week to pay the rent on time. You have a problem in this economy with the amount of money that you make and all the privilege that you have. You don't want to pay $4 for a tip. Really? This is what the senator said. Here you go. My mind is blown.
When I go to the restaurants, right, sometimes I appreciate, depends on the server that I get at that restaurant, if they're doing a good job, that, it's an automatic service charge that's placed on my receipt when I go eat. And, it's like we have no say. One day if it gets really bad, one of my servers are really bad, I'm going to ask the management, hey, I want this off my receipt because this server was not a very good server at all, and have that option. And there's nothing in the law, right? I mean, every restaurant can do that. It's similar to what we're doing here, putting, some kind of cost on here to show the people, transparency, that you're automatically tipping somebody at a restaurant, regardless if, on their service. So when Revenue Tax implements something like this, there is no choice. But just out of curiosity, is there a choice for someone to deny the service charge at a restaurant if they're not happy with the server?
I don't think we understand that, or actually we know if you can refuse. I have heard stories of people refusing, and you do sometimes hear the restaurant management say, well, the surcharge is not actually tied to a gratuity. So it depends. I don't know. That's
it all depends.
You're a senator who has the means to go and dine out. Cry me a river. Cry me a river that you don't want to pay a $3.46 service charge or a $7.67 service charge because you're not happy with your server. I remember, and as I'm thinking about it, John Maga, we probably should look a little closer into that issue of restaurants that say it's a service charge and don't actually remit any of that payment to servers. That probably really should be looked into by the Consumer Protection Division over at the Attorney General's office. So I actually do hear what you're saying with that. I had to think about that for a second. But I remember when I was working at the governor's office, and every now and then we'd have the unfortunate occasion to dine with or dine next to, at the time, Lieutenant Governor Ray Tenorio. And it was always so embarrassing because he treated the wait staff like crap. He treated the service people like crap. Before even, right before sitting down into the booth, he would snap his finger like this and say, hey, water's over here. I mean, so I'm watching Senator Taitague with all the money that she has, all the money that she makes, the fact that she's a homeowner in absolute position of privilege beyond what most servers live, how most servers live, talking about how if she's not satisfied with how she's served, perhaps Revenue Tax should enforce something so that she doesn't have to pay a service charge. Absolutely ridiculous, asinine, completely asinine, merciless as well. I mean, we elect these people, my dear friends. These are the people who we elect. Here's at least one sensible senator. It's a 32-second clip of Will Parkinson right after Telo Taitague, at least speaking up for the servers.
First off, just want to give a shout out to all those working class servers out there. Never going to try to take my 4% service charge back from you. I know how hard you people work. Some of you working 2, 3 jobs just to make things happen. If you're tired, if you're not on your best, I understand. You deserve all of it, and I'm always going to make sure that you get what's worth and what's coming to you. And so,
I'm not a big fan of the Trump administration, and I don't know if they've done this yet, but I very much support the president's call for no taxes on tips. It just makes, come on, guys. Let's be reasonable here. Let's have some compassion. Let's have some mercy. My goodness. If you've ever worked in a restaurant, you know, you're serving people. You're at someone's beck and call. You're making minimum wage. Your hope is in those tips. I would hope that part of the service charge that's being charged goes to the kitchen, the bussers, and to the servers. I would hope at least a portion of it. But even if it's not, still a little questionable, but even if it's not, right? You have to consider what the restaurants are going through in this economy. It's not a great economy. And there is something that Senator Taitague and her colleagues can do. They can really put their money where their mouths are. And I'm glad that this conversation is coming up because this is something we've advocated before. And now that Taitague has said this, it gives us a reason to bring this up again. There are two things senators can do if they want to increase the standards of service in the restaurant industry. One is increase the minimum wage. Yeah. So that these servers can be taking home more money. And maybe the restaurants wouldn't have to charge that service charge. The second thing that has to be done if you're going to raise the minimum wage is you'd have to give tax breaks to these restaurants. Exempt restaurants from the BPT so that they can do things like pay their employees more or not charge a service charge. Because all these restaurants are doing in this economy is fighting to survive. And the only money that they're going to get is from government of Guam workers who are making the money, like Senator Taitague, or from federal workers, or from the military workers, and the very few tourists that we have. I need to look at the tourist numbers to see whether things are increasing. Anecdotally, it looks like there are more tourists in Tumon, but I don't know that to be a fact. It's just something that I see with my naked eyes, right? And I want to leave with this last thought. If Senator Taitague wants to make a big deal out of taking income away from restaurants or their servers because she's not getting the service that she demands, then can we, as the taxpayers, start cutting her pay and the pay of senators and other government of Guam officials because we're not satisfied with the services that we're getting. For Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. You all have a wonderful and beautiful day. I appreciate the discussion and the comments and the debate that we have and how we can go back and forth on different things and have a civil conversation. And so, the more, the merrier. God bless you all. Have a great night and God bless you.
We got that dynamite. We got that dynamite.
Find the perfect ride for you today with the New Year New Ride sales event at Guam Auto Spot. Get behind the wheel of the 2024 Outlander Sport, starting at just $22,995 or only $156 per paycheck. Visit GuamAutospot.com or call 671-478-AUTO.